What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, Nintendo shared some new information for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as well as introducing a themed Nintendo Switch OLED system, which may have fans who picked up the Splatoon 3 OLED kicking themselves a bit. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about that new PlayStation 5 revision that first appeared in Australia, as after a recent teardown, it looks like there was quite a bit of stuff that Sony changed with this model. And we're also going to be talking about Splatoon 3. After review embargoes went live yesterday, we can kind of get an idea as to how Nintendo's next big third-person shooter turned out. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Microsoft announcing the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller in white. We saw this already leak out before, as somebody just got a hold of the controller and did an entire unboxing online, but we can see this posted up over on news.xbox.com. The Xbox Elite Series 2 is evolving with more ways to play like a pro. It seems that they're going to be launching the Xbox Wireless Controller Series 2 GORE, and that's going to be essentially the controller itself at $130, or you can get the current black model that is just completely bundled with all the extra stuff. That'd be like the paddles for the back, the additional thumbsticks, the carrying case, all this. So they're just options. If you don't want all that extra stuff, you can just get a more premium controller at $130. They also showed off this going into the Xbox Design Lab this holiday, where they'll have different colors for essentially the front of that facing part of the controller. And yes, purple was there, so good job to Microsoft. If you do want to get all the extra components down the road, it'll be $60, so you add that in with the core controller, it's $10 more to buy them separately there. My only thing with this is I'm still anticipating them to do an Xbox Elite Series 3 controller at some point. And it could be next holiday, and this is just sort of the way to get them there, kind of bridge this holiday with a new accessory. So I think I'm going to hold off on this one and just wait for that Elite Series 3 controller that should have the share button and be much more in line with what we have with just a current Xbox Series controller. But if you're looking to get a new Elite controller, this appears to be the one they're setting up for the holiday. Also, from time to time, I like to check in with Humble Bundle to see if there's anything good there, because typically they'll throw a bunch of games in and it'll be pretty cheap to grab them all together. And looks like we can see this. The 2K Mega Hits looks pretty solid. We have the Super Deluxe Edition for Borderlands 3, the XCOM Ultimate Collection. They also have like a classic XCOM complete pack. Then we have PGA 2K21, Civilization 6, BioShock the Collection, Mafia the Definitive Edition, even Duke Nukem Forever Collection, WWE Battlegrounds. These are all games that you would be claiming on Steam. So at $16, we're 18 different games. That's pretty good, I would say. It's nice at times when we get these kind of bundles from Humble, because it obviously will add quite a bit to our backlog that I'm sure just getting completely wiped out, right? We're all catching up on our backlogs. Either way, $16, you can go ahead and expand it a bit further. And if you have a Steam Deck, not a bad way to get started here. Oh, and we did have an announcement for a game going into Game Pass day one. We can see this posted up over on Xbox's website, where they say Gungrave GORE launching day one with Xbox Game Pass on November 22nd. So I'm actually pretty happy to see this, mostly because I'm not sure how Gungrave GORE is going to turn out. I only say that because previous Gungrave games have not exactly like lit up the scoreboard or anything with these reviewers, but it's still been a series that I would say has a cult following behind it, and I am happy to see a new entry in the series, like 20 years later or something. So I'm going to check it out either way, because it's going into Game Pass. I was going to check it out before, but it's nice to know that I can just download it here, see how it turns out, and if it's good, I can get it for the collection even on like the PlayStation or something there. But definitely a good way to get Gungrave out, maybe to people who would have normally skipped it. So make sure you check this one out in Game Pass November 22nd. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as we had a new trailer release yesterday morning that went over some new features in the game, and we had the introduction of a special edition Switch OLED to celebrate the release. Let's start though with some of the new features, which Nintendo Life did a very good job kind of organizing all the information together here, and we can also see some of the trailer that was released. Now, they did talk about the Victory Road, the 3 stories you can follow, Path of Legends, showed off some new characters as well as some new Pokemon getting revealed, and they talked about auto battling. I saw this and I said, that's actually a good idea, because what's the big meme that goes around is like when you play Pokemon, you just mash A over and over and over again. Well, in this case, you can just have your Pokemon battle other wild Pokemon while you run off and do other things. So it's just a way for you to get like things done a bit quicker in the game and maybe not feel as tedious overall. I mean, quality of life stuff like this is certainly welcome in all of these games, so good to see there. But the big thing that I saw all over the internet, all over social media, was the new OLED model. Now, this is coming out November 4th, so a couple of weeks before the game's release, and this will not have the games like bundled with it, which is typical for these special edition systems from Nintendo. It'll be $10 more at $360. Also typical with these special edition systems, so nothing's really different there. But the design, I really like what Nintendo is starting to do here with some of these special editions, because they seem way more in depth than I would expect them to go with a couple of these. I mean, the Splatoon 3 one was very in depth, and now we see Scarlet and Violet. We just have a whole bunch of pictures that we can look at on Nintendo's website here. Starting with like the front of the dock, we have the two legendaries there, and you know what? It looks really good against like that white dock background. They really pop off of that dock. And then you can also see the body of the Switch along with the Joy-Cons. I do like sort of the backing of the Switch, kind of has like this graffiti look to it, has the different starters there. You can see like Foy Coco right in the middle. And of course the Joy-Cons themselves themed after the different colors for Scarlet and Violet. They have the school emblems on the front, and it looks like on the back they have some of the starters kind of spread out between the two Joy-Cons. Now, I was sort of joking about, hey, people who bought the Splatoon 3 OLED might be kicking themselves after seeing this one, but there were people I saw in replies like, I just bought the Splatoon 3 OLED, and now I want this one. And in that case, if you're Nintendo, I mean, you played it right, because you're trying to sell multiple Switch systems to each household, and this is a good way for Nintendo, I guess, to do that, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are going to buy the Switch OLED and just never open it. I mean, even the box looks good, right? So in that case, yeah, the people are just collecting it for collection's sake. But it is something Nintendo is ramping up here with some of these special edition systems, looking very, very good and in-depth. And I mean, let's face it, there's gonna be a Breath of the Wild 2 Switch. If we're getting a Splatoon 3 and a Scarlet and Violet OLED, we're getting something for the next big Zelda game. And my biggest hope is that they spend this much time and go this in-depth with Metroid Prime 4. I think that would be fantastic. So that's really what I'm crossing my fingers for now. I don't think I'm gonna pick up the Pokemon OLED, the one they've shown off here, but I mean, if you are a big Pokemon fan, you probably will. I would most likely hold out for the Zelda or Metroid Prime system, especially since there is a possibility that maybe there is some sort of Switch revision that gets the Metroid Prime Special Edition treatment. I mean, that would be it right there. I would have to pick that one up. But let me know if you're someone who is looking into the Scarlet and Violet OLED and if you're thinking about grabbing it. Next up, let's talk about that PlayStation 5 revision that was first spotted in Australia. We had talked about this previously because the system itself had become even lighter, to the point where the disc-based PlayStation 5 system, this newest one, the 1200 series, now weighs the same amount as the all-digital launch PS5. That caught some people off guard, but Austin Evans did a teardown of it, and well, we can see the image here. There's quite a bit that has been altered with this system. It's directly in the middle here, and it looks like the motherboard has actually been shrunken down quite a bit. I mean, the most obvious part to really point to is if you look at where the M2 drive would go, they just removed that entire backing for the board, which, yeah, when you're starting to reorganize and figure out how you can make the motherboard cheaper, that's something I'm sure that can be eliminated and you can move some components around, because for the M2 drive, it just needs to be secured down to the casing itself. So that makes a lot of sense. But even the heatsink itself looks like it's been revised. And yeah, Sony certainly looked at the PS5 internally and said, how can we work this out so our cost basis is lower to create the system? And yes, I know prices also went up. This is all working towards Sony's bottom line at the end of the day. However, something else was spotted here by Austin, and that is that the system appears to just be pulling less power. It's about 10 to 15% less depending on which PS5 revision you have now, whether it's the original or the 1100 model, but this 1200 model is pulling about 200 watts compared to the 220, 225 watts from the other systems, which could actually indicate that Sony is using that 6nm process on this newer PS5 system with the chip inside. Unfortunately, Austin didn't remove like the heatsink or any of that, which he didn't necessarily have to tell that it was different, but I am curious if Sony has made that jump. It's been rumored for a little while now, with some more recent reports picking up, like a month or so ago, and you figure Sony is just now really pushing these out to the public, and manufacturing would have started months ago, so it can kind of line up there. But it does seem Sony, yes, cut down on costs without cutting down on, I guess, even the quality of the system, because if it is pulling less power, technically it wouldn't need as much cooling as the other systems, so you can kind of rework the heatsink placement as well as the size. And I guess one part that I'm actually pretty interested in is if this could be working towards the introduction of a PlayStation 5 Slim in the next year or two, as it seems like Sony is starting to figure out how to shrink down the board and the internals for this system. And I think most of us look at the PlayStation 5 and go, yeah, a slim system would certainly be nice. It's at least getting lighter. Now let's try to work on the outer part of it with the casing and the form factor and all of that. But if you happen to get one of these 1200 PS5 systems, looks like you're actually getting the best one, despite some of the stuff inside, like the heatsink being shrunken down. Appears that maybe the fabrication has as well. Next up, let's talk about Splatoon 3. Review embargoes did lift yesterday, and reviews started to flood in pretty quickly. In fact, it seemed that Splatoon 3 started at like a 90, and then some fairly low scores came in and knocked it all the way down. We can see this at an 84. Now, the 84 is technically the highest rated Splatoon game we've seen. I believe Splatoon 1 was like an 81, then we had Splatoon 2 at an 83. Now we see Splatoon 3 at an 84. That's on 48 critic reviews, so there's potential for more reviews to come in and can alter the score, either going down to an 83 or even jumping up to like an 85 or an 86. So keep that in mind. The review score could be changing over the next couple of days. But looking at the critic review split, 46 positive and just 2 mixed. So for the most part, people were pretty happy with this newest shooter from Nintendo. VGC gave it a 6 though, mostly saying that, well, it's still Splatoon. And yeah, I mean, sure, that's kind of what we were expecting. After that Splatfest, it did feel like a much more refined Splatoon 2. And I mean, Nintendo hasn't really done a lot to say otherwise. So the big thing that people were pointing towards, though, is that the single player is actually pretty good. It's better than Splatoon 2's, and that's something I was curious about, because I played the Splatfest for the multiplayer, and it was really enjoyable. I think the mechanics were tight, the movement was good, the shooting was good, and it looked like there was a lot of potential for customization and stuff to earn as you play through all of your matches with your friends. So I'm on board with all of that. The new mode where you have like, 4v2, v2, it was strange at first, it was chaos, but then you start to figure it out and it was, okay, this could actually be a really fun mode, and Salmon Run being 24/7. So I'm on board with Splatoon 3. I'm gonna pick it up Friday. I'll play with some of the members of the Spawncast. I'm sure we'll be talking quite a bit about it this weekend. Now, I did also see some people online say this is just too low of a score, but I think this is just something that a lot of game sequels are sort of suffering when it comes to review scores. And that's like the sequelitis aspect to it, where even if it's a better version of the previous one, it doesn't do enough to like wow reviewers. We saw it with Horizon Forbidden West, and I kind of wonder if we're going to see it with God of War Ragnarok after some of the gameplay that's coming out. It looks like there is more to the game, and they've been building on some of the previous components and aspects of it, but it doesn't really have that big wow factor that just completely hits you and catches you off guard. So maybe that's something we'll be seeing with some of these other sequels coming up. But I think an 84 is solid for Splatoon 3, and we have plenty of years to look forward to with content, and with what they did with Splatoon 2, seems like they should be delivering a pretty good overall experience going forward. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 firmware update that went live yesterday. It brought some highly requested features, which we can see over on PlayStation blog, where they say 1440p HDMI video output is now supported, but they have a little star there. That's because VRR support is not there with this resolution, which is unfortunate. You have to either use 1080p or 4K to take advantage of that if you have a display that supports variable refresh rate. Hopefully in the future, they will be able to add that to 1440p option on the PS5. They also have game lists, which is sort of just a way to organize your games, kind of like folders, I guess you could compare it to. They have some new social features, which they do detail here. You can request to share a screen from a PS5 to the mobile app on your phone, which is an interesting idea. I guess if somebody's out and about, they can take their phone out and request to look at your PS5 screen. So just more ways, I guess, to intertwine the mobile app to the system itself. They also talk about YouTube search through voice command. So let's say you're playing a game, you can go, hey, PlayStation, find Astro's Playroom. Maybe you're stuck on a puzzle or something on YouTube, and it will then launch a separate tab, it looks like, and it'll bring up results for YouTube so you can, I guess, find the solution if you need help or whatnot there. You can also launch PS Remote Play session through PlayStation app, and that way you can connect everything up through your phone to your PS5 and start playing your game mobile. So overall, a pretty good firmware update, with the biggest feature obviously being 1440p support, especially if you wanted to use your PS5 on a monitor or have been using it on a monitor and you don't have 4K support, you've been using like 1080p or something. This is a nice addition. I'm hoping that they are able to eventually add variable refresh rate as an option for 1440p, because that would be really big for, well, many monitors that have been coming out recently and have been heavily focused on games. We know Sony is also working to produce their own monitor line, so maybe this is a way to kind of tie the PS5 into that. But make sure you get your PS5 updated to take advantage of some of these different features today. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, how many Nintendo Switch systems are in your house right now? 50% say 1, 23% say 2, 8% say 3, and 7% say 4 or more, which means that 38% of people have 2 or more Switch systems in their house, meaning that they are a multi-Switch household, which is something that President Furukawa at Nintendo has said they're trying to do, is make it so that a household buys multiple Switch systems. Looks like they've been fairly successful here if 38% of people who voted in this poll have multiple Switch systems at home by way of a Switch Lite and a regular Switch, or a regular Switch and a Switch OLED that you bought somewhat recently. And I think that number will only go up if there is some sort of Switch revision, maybe next year or even the year after. If this generation continues to go longer, like I think it will, I believe they're going to have many more multi-Switch households down the road. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as we're seeing here. This is from Broll saying, I just did my first playthrough of Cyberpunk 2077 a few months back on my PS5. In my opinion, it's still pretty rough. I had to abandon my first playthrough due to a game-breaking bug. After that, I didn't have any game-breaking issues, but tons of graphical bugs and some quest-breaking bugs. It felt like a typical on-disc game without the day one patch. All that said, I was able to do everything, complete the platinum. I enjoyed the experience, but it's still far from polished, unfortunately. Yeah, for me, when I was first playing it, like the week it came out, I played through the game. I had some issues where my quest wouldn't progress because at one point I opened a locker and I put it on Twitter. The body fell out, exploded on the ground. Couldn't do anything about it. Like I had to restart and go back to a checkpoint to get through that quest, which it was fine after that. The thing that was the most aggravating for me is that the game kept crashing. It crashed more than 10 times throughout my playthrough, and I'll tell you, when you play 60 to 90 minutes of a game, so an hour and a half, and it crashes and you realize your last checkpoint was like 40 minutes ago, it is the most frustrating thing to see. So really, if they cleaned that up and made it so that some of these quest-breaking bugs weren't there, I think it would be a significantly better experience overall. Even though they would come up short of some of the promises they were making leading up to release, at least if the game was in a better state, it would have been received, I think, way better. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was the new Switch OLED that's themed after Scarlet and Violet. Are you thinking about picking that one up? And then also, what about this PlayStation 5 model, the 1200 edition, that seems to have quite a few changes done inside, and Splatoon 3, the reviews are out. Are you picking it up this weekend? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.